Welcome to Elevating Athletes, Laurel Springs Insight podcast, where we'll be running monthly talks on athletics, playing at the college level, and hot topics around college sports. My name is Michaela Anderson, and along with me today, I have my colleague, Katie Mann.
Hello, everybody. Like Miss Anderson said, welcome to Elevating Athletes, Laurel Springs Insight Podcast. My name is Katie Mann. I'm one of the college athletic counselors here at Laurel Springs. My background comes from college athletics. I've been around the college athletic world for quite some years before coming to Laurel Springs. And now here I am, having worked at Division I and Division III colleges, and I try to bring my insight to Laurel Springs.
And my background is I had worked in college sports for 10 years prior to coming to Laurel Springs as an associate athletic director over academics and compliance. And then both Katie and myself were able to play college sports as well and have that student athlete experience. For today's episode, we're super excited to have a special guest, LSS alum, former top-ranked player, professional coach, and now a major force in the tennis industry, JY. Super excited to have you join us today. Thank you for your time. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about how you're involved in the tennis world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first, thank you for having me on. For me to be able to connect with Laurel Springs and spend some time talking to the students and players there. I mean, it's an honor for me. So, because it feels like yesterday I was still a student. I still kind of wish I was. So, but yeah, I'm a former, played junior tennis, had a lot of success as a junior. Went to college at Florida State, was an All-American there, and went to finance, came back to tennis, played pro for 4 years, and then I ran a country club, a junior tennis program there at a country club with over 150 kids. So I got to see that side of things. But then I went on and worked with Riley Opelka, that's probably one of my more well-known position for people in the industry today. So I spent 5 years traveling with him from when he was 230 in the world, got all the way to 17 in the world. Had a 2 year stint with a poor guy, injured for 2 years. So I had a little bit of a break there. And yeah, and then at the same time, I stopped working with him, had an online program where I was trying to help kids with match analysis. I think that's one of the things when we'll talk a little bit about it in the podcast today, where, at least in junior tennis, one of the biggest differences versus pro tennis is so many of these kids don't have anyone watching their matches. And yet, if you don't know what's going on in a match, how do you know exactly what to work on? Right. So, I mean, it's what happens under pressure that counts. So we have to see how everybody is because we all know athletes are different under pressure. So I started an online business helping families with that. And, right now, my primary role, my big roles are first, I'm the Technifiber sports marketing manager in the United States. So I'm in charge of junior sponsorships. So scout juniors, recruit them, try to bring them onto our team, and and try to bring what I think are now are some of the best products on the market. The way we've improved, try to help players in that department. At the same time, I'm also the director of player and coach relations for the Intense Tennis League and their media host. We're not doing video. That's where I got all this like gear set up. This is just sitting on my desk. I just pull it out and it's right there. So I'm the media host for Intense as well. And that's a pro league where we're trying to have a team format league, men and women on the same team. And the fun part is it's substitutions in the middle of the match, which makes it a real team format. And just trying to create a different avenue, a more financially stable pathway for players to transition into a pro career, where right now it's just chaos, to put it in a nice term. And also, we have the goal of ultimately having junior teams underneath all the pro teams to try to create a team format within tennis. Because I know we lose a lot of kids when they're young to team sports. So I try to keep it short. I do a lot. So how was that?
That was great. And I mean, you're a force to be reckoned with in this industry, and your knowledge stretches all over the industry, which is great. As we get this started off today with answering the questions, first, did want to thank all of our LSS students and families who submitted their questions to give feedback for topics they wanted to hear more about. We're going to do our best today to kind of answer all of those questions and see how much we can pull knowledge-wise out of JY today to share with our families. Um, so we have a lot here at Laurel Springs. We have a lot of tennis players playing in the juniors. And a lot of them are asking us, and specifically you now that you've joined us for this podcast, as they are trying to figure out like what's next after juniors, what does that look like? Like, what do they need to know as far as like, am I ready to turn professional? Is it better to go the NCAA college route? What's like the differences between like pro tennis and playing Division I tennis? And where where do they need to be in like, I mean, ranking's a big part of this sport. I'm a full believer that it's not everything though, but where kind of rankings do they need to make those decisions, or who helps them make those decisions?
Yeah, and I love that you made that one comment about rankings. I mean, look, we're in sports, we're in competition. At the end of the day, we're trying to win, right? If we lose at everything, we're just gonna, that's not fun for anybody. So, but what we try to do is try to win, but in a healthy way, where we still, even within the losses, we're still wanting to come back, right? So let's just be honest about it. At the end of the day, you can only ignore results for so long and rankings for so long. And that's where when you try to look at, am I ready to go pro? Fortunately, I think times have changed so much thanks to, let's just say NIL really in tennis. It's not that a lot of tennis players are getting NIL, but what I think it's done is it's brought in so many players into college that would have never been there, and it's made the level of tennis higher. And so now it's a much more viable pathway to get to pros because the level's higher. College coaches are allowing players to go play more tournaments than ever before while in college. Sometimes they even actually pay for them to go. And so they're supporting the pro pathway more than ever. And so I think probably in the last like 2 years, I think if you're not going to college and you want to go straight pro, I mean, you have to be top 200 in the world at like 17, 18 years old. In the pro space, not on the junior space. If you're, because we're seeing in the international rankings, top 10 kids in the world still going to college, at least for a year or two. Again, NIL is bringing them in, they get paid some, and that helps fund their career. So even if you are that good, establishing that connection with the university where a lot of them have programs where you can even continue your education if you decide to move on early and go play pro. You have that connection to a team. It's a great support system for when you move on. The alumni really support you, they watch you. I mean, again, if you're not playing in Grand Slams by the time you're graduating, I just don't see how you're not going to college. It's too much of a no-brainer because also in college, for most kids, by the time they're 18, they're still not physically ready to go pro. So, even if they've racked up some ranking points and all that, physically, they're still kids playing amongst men. And so college gives them time to continue to grow, continue to get stronger, but within an environment that's more supportive, less pressure because it's a team environment. And so going to college gives you a huge advantage to be able to spend a few years getting better as a player, getting physically stronger, and the amount of matches you as a college player versus when you're a junior, there's a lot of juniors that just couldn't afford to travel so much or just didn't have to travel as much. And that's something that I do think is part of the pro life. Like if you want to go pro, it's not just tennis anymore. It's the life of a pro, competing, playing so many matches week in and week out. You just don't do that as a junior unless you're one of the few that were traveling 25 weeks a year around the world by the time you were 16, 17. So it's college is just also a great time to just get a lot of matches. So, and you just learn how to compete. And I think that's the biggest thing. You look at a lot of these players, Steve Johnson, John Isner, that came out of college, they learned how to win, right? And even if they weren't perfect as tennis players, learning how to win is more important than being this perfect tennis player.
So we talked about, obviously, if your goal is to play professionally, you consider going professionally first or going to college. And I think what you said about going to college and all the pros of it is great. We get a lot of questions from families about different pathways to college, aka like what does gap time look like? Do I take gap time to try and go to a higher ranked college, or do I just go to the college that is currently recruiting me? Dare I say, then transfer to a higher college? What is your stance on that of those different avenues?
Well, you hit on something not on purpose, but it really made me want to address something that I think a lot of families need to understand, which unfortunately might make me forget your actual question. So you might have to remind me.
It's okay.
But, I think when players talk about getting to Division One and being a top college player or even being pro, yeah, I think one of the mistakes I've seen from a lot of juniors and parents and when trying to manage their career is they'll say, "Well, he's not going pro right now," or "she's not going pro right now," or they just want to play D1. They don't want to play college, or they don't want to play pro after, right? And so, but the problem is most D1 players that are playing one or two in the top 40, you could say, top 40 teams, they want to go pro or they wanted to go pro as a kid. So they've been training to be a pro. Their level's just not there yet. So you're going to be going up against those players. So if you haven't trained like them and played like them and have that intensity and physicality, just because you're going to Division One, that doesn't matter. You're still going to be trying to compete against those people for those spots. And so when we talk about pathways and what to do or anything, I would just said, look, the biggest difference between what I think are the top juniors and the ones that are below is that these top juniors, because they have this pro mindset and they want to be pro, nothing is ever good enough. They're always trying to get better. They might win a tournament, but they're always looking at what's next, what's next, get better, get better, get better, train more, get better, more efficient, all of that. Because all they see is, well, if they want to be pro, those pros are better than what they are. And so they have to continue getting better. Now, I'm not saying people should be trying to be pro to get, if that's what it takes to get to Division One. But what I'm trying to get at is the mindset that these top juniors are having is always trying to get better every day, all the time, no matter what. That's it. And when I hear people try to say, well, I'm just going to go to Division One, they don't train as hard. They don't train as much. They don't train as efficiently. They get satisfied a lot more with certain results. They get satisfied with losing to top players very close because now their UTR is going to go up because um, I don't know if you've had these conversations or not, but it's very well known in the UTR world. If you lose a close match to a higher ranked player, your ranking goes up. Well, guess what? At some point, if you really wanted to go up even more or above other players, you actually have to beat them. So, but a lot of players get satisfied losing close matches, and they will talk about how, um, you know, oh, yeah, I lost 7-5, 7-6 to a top player. Yeah, it was a great match. And I'm like, you lost. Like you lost. This is competition. You're happy with that. And so the top players, like they don't care who they lose to. They can go up against a pro and they're ticked off if they lose. Even if it's a close match, they're upset because now they need to go back to practice. It's a mindset thing. And so here's another example through it's funny through my work at Technofiber. I'll get some of our sponsored players sometimes reaching out to me in the middle of a tournament saying, "Hey, I'm in the semifinals, just wanted to let you know." And I'm like, well, they didn't reach out to me after the first round because they didn't think I was going to be impressed, right? Or the second round or the quarterfinals, right? Now they're in the semifinals. Now they're reaching out to me. What does that say? They're satisfied. 95% of the time, if not almost 100, they lose the very next match because they're satisfied and they take that mindset into the next day. They let their foot off the gas pedal. There's a small part of them that is allowing themselves to lose the next day, and it's a good tournament. That's a big no-no. Like if you're really trying to be a pro or a top athlete, or just trying to get better, like you can't ever stop because the competition's not stopping. Now you can be happy and proud, but then still continue working. And I think that's the hard balance. It's a very difficult one. I was having this conversation with a parent before, and I'm really ignoring your question now. So sorry about that. But I was having a conversation before, which is like the hard part is the way you raise a happy, healthy child is not always like what you're going to do if you're trying to raise a happy, healthy athlete, right? That's trying to be great because if you just want your child to be happy and you don't care what they do, like if they're just messing around on the tennis court or not having the most efficient practice, but they're out there, they're running around, they're healthy, they're smiling with their friends, like as a parent, like when I see my son do that right now, it's like the greatest thing in the world, right? But if you're 15, 16 years old, you're spending thousands of dollars traveling around the world, you have these big high goals, you cry after matches, you throw your racket because you're upset, and now you go to you go practice and you're not making the most out of it. The parent and the coach are gonna have to sit hopefully the parent, the coach first, but then if the child brings that conversation to the parent, they're gonna have to reinforce it. Be like, no, that is ridiculous. That is a waste of time, effort, money, everything. Don't ever do that again if those are your goals. Now, if you don't want those goals anymore, then we can change the goals, we'll change the structure, and I won't get on you as much. And we'll just have a happy merry-go-round. That's the hard balance when you're trying to strike. It's a very difficult and it can be unhealthy balance. I know there's a question out there we'll get to about trying to strike a balance between life and athletics and school and everything. Like the healthy balance for a great athlete is not the healthy balance for a normal child just going to school. It's just not. And so I can go on and on. I got coffee in hand. I'm ready. So I'll just give it a break. So if you want, we can follow up there. We can go back to your original question. But I felt like that's an
I did,
important thing that I wanted to point
it's
out.
it's so important. So I mean, I didn't play tennis, didn't grow up in that world at all, but when I worked as an associate athletic director, we had a tennis coach where he went and flew basically like 7 states over to go watch a match of one kid, which is it's expensive to go do that recruiting trip. And they watched the kid have a full-on meltdown on the court, and that was the end of it. No more. Because they didn't want that in their team environment. Um, so that's, I mean, yes, the other thing that keeps coming up is I had a college tennis coach once tell me like UTR is important. It like creates a door into like talking to me if you have like a certain UTR ranking. But that's not the only thing I'm going to look at because I'm also going to look at how many matches you're playing every year to get the UTR that you have.
Yeah, and that UTR one is a tricky one because let's first understand. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of a rating system that can reward people for losing. But let's also be honest about it. When we talk about what UTR is, it is actually a very extremely accurate rating of where you are in that moment in time. I've seen so many players. You're not going to see somebody that's a 9 UTR beat a 12 UTR ever. It's just not going to happen. You cannot say I'm a 9 UTR, I don't play enough matches, but I deserve to play on the same team as a 12 UTR just because I'm dedicated to school and I'm just not traveling a lot. Like no, okay, maybe you are dedicating that time. I promise you, maybe you're a 10 UTR, but you're not a 12, right? So let's be honest, like it is very accurate. Now, what a coach will look for is there some underlying potential that the UTR cannot account for, right? But you still have to have a certain level for them for it to make sense because they know they go too far down to extract all that potential will take way too long. They only have 4 years, like, so I think parents want to try to say like, and kids too, like, well, but I dedicated my time to this. Like, there's a lot of, it's just too hard to make up for it. I'll just leave it at that. So you still need a certain level for them to look at you. Then within that, you can try to sell the story, right? And then depending on that story, then you can try to make something up. But the hard part for coaches too, like, look, they're especially with international players now. These coaches, I was talking to a Division 1 college coach, talk to them all the time. Like the top ones are getting 50 emails or messages a week on recruits.
Minimum. Yeah.
Minimum. They can't just look at every story. They also have a team to manage. They also have a family at home. So they need some sort of shortcut, and UTR is an incredible thing for them to look at. So it does cut the list down. So, you know, but like there's a point where also these coaches like their income is tied to their success as a team. So some schools they don't need to win championships, but they still need to win a certain amount. Like they can't take a risk on someone who's so far out of the range and take up spots and then they lose and because then they get fired. So let's not put this on the college coaches when it comes to UTR and all this stuff. I think like I've always said it's on the parents and coaches and players. What are you looking at if you want to get to college tennis or pro or you want to improve? What they do often is they stare at the ranking and they look at every little decimal point and, oh, we went up today. That's great. Look, I, When I was coaching full time, I'll tell you the full on truth. And even now, as I'm looking at all the sponsored players we have for Technofiber Lacoste, like I look at UTR a lot, and especially for players that I'm coaching, I look at it a lot, but it doesn't change my process, right? It's more of informative for me, but it doesn't change what I'm going to work on in practice. I will never talk to a player about their UTR. I will never talk to the parent about their UTR until college recruiting actually comes around and they need an idea of where they are, right? But I never talk UTR with the player ever. What does it do for them? Absolutely nothing. Every player I talk to, I'm like, if you want to talk about UTR, and you want to impact it the most and you want it to go higher, well, clearly that means you need to get better as a player. So if you get focus on the areas you need to improve the most, and if you improve in those areas, you will compete better in matches, which will then directly impact your UTR. But if you start with the reverse and you focus too much on winning without ever improving the skills that are holding you back, your ranking's never going to go up. So you can improve your UTR and all your rankings without ever talking about them. And in fact, the more you talk about those rankings and ratings, the more pressure you're going to put on them. So it literally does no good. It's just get on them and practice. That's it. That's where it all starts.
No, I think that's really good. And I think, to summarize all that's been said so far, for if you're telling a junior player or their family, like if you could summarize it in like two or three things, like what are those two or three things that that junior player or family needs to know in order to become a successful pro player one day? Like if it's three pieces of advice, what would that be?
You have to be able to look around and know that no one else is working harder than you. And we know when you're an athlete. Okay, so you can't lie to yourself. To be a pro, you're talking about being one of the best in the entire world. When you go to bed at night, you have to know nobody else is putting in more work than you. And if you're even putting in the same amount of work, one, you have to wonder, can I put in more? Or two, can I put in that same amount but be even more efficient? So that's number one. If you're in a junior academy and you're trying to be pro and you look around and you're training the same as much as everybody and you're working just as hard as everybody and you're playing the same tournaments as everybody, you're going to have the same results as everybody. So you have to do something different if you want to be different. Second, it's a mentality. You know, more than anything, I think I'll say this or just for when I've noticed this when it comes to kids who are really trying to work hard in education and school, and there's a tough balance to find. There's a type of competitiveness where the best athletes also don't overthink, right? They try harder than anybody to win, but they don't get hung up on the win or loss when it's at the end of the day. It doesn't define who they are, right? They're not going to lose sleep over it. It's they can play without fear of losing. They just want to win really bad, right? And so I'm trying to put this in short words because I'll start this way. Okay. Some of the worst players I've ever seen are the ones who that's actually really wrong. If we can edit that part out or we can leave it in so parents can laugh at me so they can see that I mess up when coaches mess up too. So, but I've seen some of the hardest workers in the world that are some of the most book smart people in the world that don't win a match. And the reason being is they play everything with their mind. They're used to studying everything. They're used to overthinking everything. They're used to memorizing every word, every number, every formula. And in school, you can go really, really far with just being that dedicated to just memorizing everything you're reading. And then when you don't know something, you just think more and you think more and you think more and you find it in the back of your mind. As an athlete, that's actually the worst thing you can do. When you overthink as an athlete, you're just going to fail because you're overthinking. You're paralyzing your body, your mind. You're tight, you're muscled, you're tense. You don't let go. And so finding that balance between I'm going to work harder than everybody, I'm going to do more than everybody, I'm going to be more efficient than everybody, but I also can't overthink. And I also have to let it go. And I have to just trust myself And whatever the result is, the result is I just trust that I'm going to be fine. You know, that's what I've seen the best athletes have, you know. Um, but that's a really difficult balance to find. And it's one of those that, you know, it's very hard to just teach that. I don't even know if you can just teach that. You know, it's something within. Because obviously, as a coach, you're trying to teach, you're trying to coach, you want them to listen, but at the same time, you also have to let go, and they have to let go and just play. And then if they miss, they're okay with it. They just go again, and they go again, and they go again, because they have this underlying belief that they know they're going to get it. They just know it. And that's another thing that I've just seen with athletes is that the best ones have this almost a logical disillusional belief on, if that's even a word, disillusional, but this illogical belief that they can accomplish absolutely anything. That like failure is just a whatever to them. They're like, yeah, that's fine. I'll beat them next time. And you can look at it and you're like, they believe it. I've been around a pro who's like one of the top pros in the world, and he would look at other top players in his draw. You know, when the draw would come out, talk about it, and be like, "Oh yeah, I'll be in the quarterfinals. Just got to get through this one guy. I'll be totally fine." And then just so and so. And I'm like, "Do you know that person's 20 in the world? Like, they're not a bad tennis player." He's like, "No, guy's terrible, terrible. I can beat him." No problem. I'm so much better than them. Look at this. Look at what they do wrong. I'm gonna expose them. Like I know exactly how to beat them. And they actually believe it. And to us, it's like, do you know how tough of a matchup that is? But they see and believe everything. They can beat everybody, and they lose, and they'll walk off the court and be, I can't believe I lost that guy. I'm gonna crush him next time. And they believe it, and they go out and they practice that way. And so they never get like shaken. They have their moments, but like every athlete where they have some doubt, but for the most part, there's just this belief and they practice with it. And then they play like it. Like it's a big moment in time and they might be so nervous. They're they know they're going to make it. They're going to make that shot. And they're going to go for it. Whereas the people who don't succeed, they know the shot they go for, but they don't have that full belief, and so they don't go for that shot. And or when they do, they're afraid to actually hit out because they're afraid to miss. You know, whereas the other ones, they're more afraid of losing, and they know they can win. So they have to go for it, and they're gonna go. It's just so hard to just put in simple terms, but that's it. They have this belief. So those three things: the work ethic's got to be more than anybody else. The ability to just compete and play free and trust themselves in a big moment, and then just this underlying confidence that I do think can be built by the environment that's around the athlete. You know, if you're, I've seen this definitely with kids and families and coaches around them when they say like, "Oh, they're just going to play D3 or just D2." What are you doing already to them? You're capping their success. How do you know if they're going to be a pro or not? How do you know they're not just going to be a Division 1 player, and they're actually going to be that one who actually makes it to top 20 in the world? You don't know unless you let them try. You don't know unless you let them talk about it. One of my favorite, I really, really wish I remember, but Baltimore Ravens, I love their mentality as a football team. And one of the players was always talking about, like, if I can't talk about championships, how am I going to win a championship? I have to be able to talk about it first. If not, why am I ever going to believe it? So, we have to let these kids dream. We have to let them talk about it. And when they say go for it. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Everybody, we don't know who can or can't do it until they try. We don't know. I don't know what a kid's potential is at 10, 11 years old. I need to see you try. And then give me a few years and then I'll let you know when you've put everything in place. But if you cap it early, well, then I know for sure you're just not going to make it. I don't, I don't care how hard you work. You're not going to talk about it. You're not going to believe it. Therefore, you're never going to train that way.
Yeah, it's interesting on the mentality. Just that belief factor in yourself, which is hard. It's hard to get yourself into that state.
The environment's very important. You have to have an environment that also supports you believing in that. You know, any parent that comes across it, even if that their 7-year-old is talking about being number one in the world, it's like just let them talk about it, let them do it, and then if they want to practice more, go out, let them go practice, go do it, let them talk about it. You don't know how it's amazing how far that can go. And a lot of times we crush kids' dreams way too young. And so they themselves, what do they do? Like failure is a painful thing. So they're going to protect themselves and they're not going to go for it because they don't believe it and it's just miserable to fail. But if they lose, but they know that everybody else around them believes they can achieve it, they're going to get back up the next day and they're not going to be so concerned about that loss. But with every loss, it's like, oh, your UTR is not going up. Oh, you're not going to make it to Division One. Oh, you got to start winning. That's talking about somebody who's concerned about their future, right? When you're around top players and top coaches that believe in their players, they'll lose a huge match, and it's like, don't worry, you'll win the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. To shift gears just a little bit, since you were an LSS student at one point, how do you balance everything? Like for our students, and like a lot of our students have some like, they want to go on and they want to play Division One, but they're like trying to go to very academically prestigious universities as well. And a lot of the upper ranked tennis programs are very academically driven universities. So like how do you recommend like balancing the school, the training, and like they're also high school kids?
Yeah. Yeah. I think first, I think homeschooling in Laurel Springs is much closer to what their college environment's going to be like than what regular schooling, high schooling is going to be. Okay, well, when you go to college, you don't sit in a classroom for 7 hours a day. You don't do that. So to me, the current schooling system is actually the inefficient one that is balanced incorrectly, right? I mean, I know a lot of players that went on to Ivy League and were extremely successful, but they started homeschooling. Like you go to class during, in college, you're there maybe 2 to 4 hours a day, maybe, right? Some days you can only do one because you put 4 or 5 on the other day. So,
Right.
trying to find that balance, it's like if you're actually training, 3 to 5 hours a day, and I'm including some stretching and gym work and all that. I don't mean all tennis there, but then you balance that with 3 to 4 hours of schoolwork, or maybe two, and then you spread it out over the weekend. Like that's actually closer to what you're going to be doing in college. So, I don't think families need to be afraid if they're homeschooling. I think it's more of like, especially I look at my son as he's going to be moving up through schools and stuff, and I'm like, he's gonna have to sit in a classroom for like from 7:38 to like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, I never did that in college, so I wouldn't worry too much about the balance. I think that's a great part about Laurel Springs and homeschooling. It actually prepares you more for what college is going to be like than what regular schooling is going to be. So, college is going to be, like we said, 3 to 5 hours of training a day. Top juniors, that's what they should be training. You know, I know when I was growing up, I was playing 4 hours of tennis a day, 5 days a week. One of those. Then I'd have another day in the week where I'd just kind of do like a light 1.5 hour, 2 hour practice. Then on top of that, I'd be doing about an hour and a half of fitness a day. So it's about 5 to 5.5 hours of work, 5 days a week. Um, I know that sounds like a lot if you're 11, 12. I wouldn't do that if you're one of those that got into homeschooling early. That's something more, I think, when you're 14, 15, once you start getting into high school, that because when you're young, I don't think your body can even handle that. I just think that's a really tricky thing. You're not going to reap the rewards. You're going to crush yourself physically. You're going to risk getting injured. Mentally, it's going to be exhausting. You got to slowly work your way up. That's what I think. Start if you're 10, 11, and you're already in homeschooling, 12, start slowly increasing your training hours over the next 6 months to a year. And then the next year, you maybe increase another hour per day or 2 to 3 hours a week. Work your way up there. I think sometimes we shock kids too much and all right, we're homeschooling now and you're going from 10 hours to 20. Like those first 3 months, those kids are going to be just completely a mess. So there's a way to do this more in a healthy way. Um, but I'll also say, a little bit more on balance too. Like, look, if you're trying to be a great athlete, there's never going to be the healthy balance is still going to be tilted towards your sport. And I think, but when you get to be an adult, if you want to have a success in your career, the healthy balance, if you're trying to have a great career, is going to be tilted a little bit more towards your career than family life. It's just the way life is. So I think sometimes what we want to do is just try to put a structure around kids that, even though it's tilted more in the direction of training, that they're in an environment they want to be in. That it's not just like I'm doing this because I want to be a great player and I want to be Division One or pro, right? Like try to find a training environment where they like who they're training with. Trying to find a coach that they really like being around. Trying to find a supportive environment that believes in them, supports them, and even on a day where they're not playing tennis or training, that they kind of miss being with their friends there, right? Because those are their friends. And so even though it's a little bit of an unhealthy balance where they're doing a lot more tennis and traveling and all that than they are actually schoolwork, one, it's closer to college already. And two, if they have a good environment around them, it won't feel like it's an unhealthy balance, right?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I so as we wrap up this episode, I do want to touch base though on the tennis landscape and like the changes going on inside of it, specifically at the NCAA side. And then I also wanted to like learn a little bit more about that intense tennis league that you're a part of and like how is that changing the landscape for kids as they think about goal number one is playing Division 1 tennis and then like what's goal number two now that I've achieved goal number one? Because there's a lot of student athletes I've talked to, they're like, made it. I signed with my dream school. I'm going Division 1. And now there's like, well, what am I working towards to next? So I kind of wanted to touch base on that. But like inside the NCAA piece with the landscape changing with roster limits, rosters being filled, through students all over the world, not just American, heavy international. What do you think this is all going to look like when it's said and done, where for men's and women's tennis, I mean, different roster numbers going out there, but now men's tennis potentially can be fully funded, which is great instead of 4.2 scholarships or whatever it used to be when you played. So everybody gets a little bit more piece of that cake. And then I also wanted to ask too, to add to this is like NIL. Like you touched about it a little bit about it opening more doors. Have you dealt with it in your brands that you represent?
Yeah, I think NIL is just a part of it now. And, um, I think it's, even in the junior space, some more NIL conversations are happening. Um, I just find it crazy. Um, I think it is what it is. You can come up with a lot of ways to also rationalize it. I mean, what difference is there from a 14-year-old kid just going out and getting a real job and getting paid for it, and just putting some money in their pocket? So, um, to me, it's like if they get to play a sport they love and they get to be rewarded for it because a brand thinks they're a great representative, they have great values and great character that really represents the brand, and they can put some money aside for it. I think the difference becomes like, what NIL is. This is very important for families to think about. Like, it's not like you can't get paid to about you can't get bonuses based on your results, right? It's just
Correct.
you're a representative of the brand. That's it. And so I think that's the thing. The trick is to not put pressure on the kids, um, to try to get more results, to try to get bigger NIL money. But part of that NIL is also like the character of the child, the way they carry themselves, represent a brand. It could be a great learning opportunity for a young child to already learn about money. I think it's a great opportunity for them to learn about bank accounts, savings, checkings, credit cards. You can obviously these kids won't have the credit cards, but it opens the door for them to learn a lot, how to work with companies. We talk about internships for kids or summer jobs. So, for them to get good experience. Well, if done the right way, this can also help them get some experience and just learn about it and marketing and everything. And so, you know, that's I still try to wrap my head around it. It's so different. My whole thing is just for me, the conversations with NIL and parents and families always needs to be, I need to hear a healthy family on the other side of it. It can't be like wins and losses and we need to make more money in this because then I can just see if there's always a point there's dips in results and then there's going to be a lot of pressure and that kid is just going to crumble because they're young, right? So what we just try to look for is there a healthy environment that we're getting into and supporting, or are we just supporting somebody who did great, but man, there could be fireworks at some point if the results aren't there. We don't want to, make that environment worse, by putting even more pressure on kids. So I think that's the same thing if you're somebody who's fortunate enough to be in these NIL conversations now, just look at it as do this in a very healthy way. If not, just stay out of it. These are kids. You either do it for me, you do it the right way, or you don't do it at all, right? So a little bit of money here and there is not going to change your life anyway. So if it is, then but I don't think anybody's paying that kind of money as far as I know with kids. But and then how that evolves into college, like NILs come in, but then when we talk about that, like most tennis schools are still not paying NIL. Like most, it's still very few that are paying, and very few, even less, that are paying even well, right? So, like, I think as they try to look towards, it's like, again, don't search for NIL, don't try to get NIL. Just if you happen to be in those conversations, just let it be a byproduct of what's happened. You worked hard, you had fun, you got better, you had success. It was a great journey. You grew up, and oh wow, now somebody wants to reward you. That it. Do not make it a goal. Do not say like I need to go to a university where I can get paid to do this, because there's very, very few. If you think there's very few scholarships already in Division One, there's it like even less they're paying out for their kids, right? To go to college there. And then when you talk about like changing landscapes, there will be less roster spots, especially when it comes to, there's a lot more international players now that are coming into universities in the United States. First, I hear these conversations about like, oh, we need to limit how many international players have. This is taking up spots for Americans. And I get it. These are American institutions. But let's get to the part that we're athletes first, right? We're competitors. If you're afraid of a competitor coming in and taking your spot and you don't want them to come, you shouldn't be a competitor. Okay? Like if you really want to be the best, you don't care who's coming up on your team. All right, there were international players on my team. I don't care. I'm gonna beat you. I want to play number one on my team. I want to be the best. Okay, I'm gonna beat you in practice every day. If anything, you're gonna help me get better if you're that good. So the best athletes are not afraid of anybody. If you are, that is a red flag, and every college coach knows it. Okay, if they hear families talking about internationals, this and that, they know that's probably a weak-minded competitor that is going to break down under pressure, right? The best are not afraid. So if you're trying to get into colleges and you're afraid of international players, you need to change your mindset. That's number one. So second, this is my favorite part because it gives me an opportunity to talk about D2, D3, and all these other schools. Okay. There are so many players at these schools that can play Division One. And we've learned this also at the Intense League, right? Because a lot of times your UTR won't go up when you're at some of these schools because you just don't play against enough competitors that have really high UTRs. So you might look like you're not as good as them, but if you come up against other higher rated UTR players, you're just as good as them. You just don't get that opportunity, right? Because it's all relative to who you play against. There's so many great players at these universities. So you can go to a D2 or D3 and have an extremely competitive season. Some of these institutions have better educations than D1 schools. Okay. So if you're not going to go pro, then you can still get an unbelievable education with an extremely competitive environment and develop a great structure where you make lifelong friends. Like, what more do you want out of a college? So, like, I say this is very funny, but I think it's an interesting point of view. Like, in none of my jobs, maybe I've had like two, three conversations at first, but nobody asked me about me playing at Florida State anymore. No one says like, "Oh, dude, you play D1. Can you help us on this on this project that we're working on?" No. Like maybe that got me the interview, but from there it's up to me to like show up. So like and if so it's like no one talks about this when you get older. D1, D2, D3, whatever. Like when you get a job or you become an adult, no one cares. Your friends don't care. That's another one. I had to tell it to these players. Uh, I knew today was going to be, we're going to talk about it a lot, but I can really go in depth. But I was talking to two players and I'm like, no one asked me about my time at the US Open. None of my friends, I don't even know if my friends know right now. Because most of your friends when you're in tennis, like as a junior, probably not going to be your friends as an adult. You just go in different stages. You live in different areas, moving in different directions. meet new people. No one asked me about when I played in the US Open. No one asked me about when I coached rally at the US Open. No one asked me about that time that I was on TV. No one does. My son doesn't talk about it. My wife doesn't ask me about it. They don't care. They just don't. They literally just care who I am as a person that day. Can I do my job? Can I help? Can I be a good husband? Can I be a good friend? Can I be a good dad? And can my bosses at work rely on me? That they're not, I can't make up for that with my past results. So I think that's something like we need to just try to get kids to understand. Look, it's awesome you want to try to achieve this stuff and all of that, but I promise you, like there, you will reach a point in life pretty soon. No one's going to care. They're only going to care what you can do right now and who you are now. So, it doesn't matter what school you go to. Just work hard, get better, improve yourself as a human being, get great character, be a good team player. And it really doesn't matter what school you go to. If you had a great time and you did all the things I just said that you should do, you're going to end up in a good place in life, which at the end of the day, just remember, you're going to spend more time being a working human being than you are a tennis player. So you probably want to get ready for the part that you're going to be doing a lot more than you are right now.
Yeah, definitely. Can you so elaborate though on the intent? So you said that Division 2 and Division 3 players, you guys are finding that they might be a good fit into this. How are you figuring that out?
That's where we just have to, we really got to do our research. I got to put
Okay.
myself in the shoes of the college coach now, right? So, fortunately, like I don't have a team of players right now that I need to focus on and do the recruiting. So right now we're doing recruiting for season 2, and that's my biggest thing. So I got months to plan for this. We have our draft in March. And so, basically we're a team format league. Players get salaries. They get prize money on top of that, but they compete as a team, 8 players on a team. And for 2 months next season, they're going to be training together, living together, and just experiencing all this together, but with salaries. Expenses are paid for. They don't have to pay for coaching. Just like any other pro athlete, they do have to take care of wherever they live. If you want to live at your friend's house, you can live at your friend's house. Or if you live in Atlanta, you can, great, save more money. Um, but, we want to create a pro league that's just like the other pro leagues, right? In NFL, NBA, where they eventually want to get to this is your year-long job. You have a preseason, a regular season, and a postseason, an off season. But you do it as a team. You travel together. You have a good support system around you, and you don't have to pay for it all. You get actually paid to do it. So if the other sports could do it, why not us? And so we think we found a format that supports that, and we really want to try to create an avenue where, right now, I mean, you can be 350 in the world, you're still losing money. I mean, if you're 200 in the world, but you do it the right way, which means you spend money on a coach full time and you travel with them, which is what the top pros doing, you might still lose money, and even if you did, you could probably make more money working at McDonald's, all year long, and that's your full time job. You're going to take more. You're going to make more money just staying home and doing that. So there's not a lot of money to be made unless you're like top 70 in the world. So for everybody else, like this is an incredible way that's more secure with salaries. You don't travel the world 35 weeks of the year. You get to stay stateside and you have a predictable schedule so you can see your family and friends. You go home every week, where right now players travel. Sometimes they're not home for 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, it's for me, I've said if you want to be a successful pro, if you have the level, that's one thing. Can you live the life of a pro? That is a totally different thing. And that is something that you just don't know. So you just have to wake up and start traveling and then just see if you can do it. And most people cannot, right? Because the support system also isn't there, and financially it's miserable. So that's where we've built this league now for anybody else that doesn't want to travel that much, wants to play in a team, do it in a more supportive way, see their family and friends a lot more. Intent is for you. And for players, like when we talk about recruiting them, we are doing a deep dive, right? It's not just video, it's not just level. It's, we're coming up right now with a really creative, sneaky questionnaire that you think you're just answering a question, but we're actually getting a deep look into your personality and your character. And so then with phone calls and this and that, because for us, we're a sports league, but we're a business at the same time. If we don't bring in enough money someday, then we're all out of jobs, right? So in order for the business to grow, we need media sponsorship, we need partners, revenue, all that to come in. So we need people that are going to come in and help us build the business, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So we look for players with personality, creativity, character, teamwork. I would rather take somebody who's more willing to be part of a team, that is a lot of fun, brings great energy, shows great on camera, has a great time, understands how to play for a team, that is a much lower level player. Because guess what? Fans are going to enjoy watching that player. But if I have a terribly boring player that just wins everything and is miserable to be around and shows horrible on camera, I can't pick that guy to be in our league. Like, no one's going to want to watch him. If no one wants to watch us, then so we need to strike that balance.
Yeah, I'm excited to see like how that forms out. We'll definitely be staying tuned to see how you select and who you select and what that looks like moving forward. I do want to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. This has been super helpful. Families, I really hope that you get as much as we did out of this piece. The tennis world is ever changing and ever fascinating. There's a lot of components to it, and look forward to part two, where JY comes back and talks to us a little bit more about the mental side of tennis and how to perfect your mental game. Thank you, everyone.